Welcome to Morning Joe with Tom, with your host, Thomas Chappell. Get ready to listen to real-life stories from inspiring leaders who have overcome incredible challenges to rise to the occasion. If you're ready to add some pep to your morning with a new outlook on leadership, then grab your cup of coffee. It's time to be inspired. Here's your host, Thomas Chappell.
Hey, Grant. Thanks for meeting up with me. It's been kind of a while since we got to talk, but I'm so glad to have you on the show today.
I am. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's flattering. I've seen you from afar, watch what you're doing on LinkedIn. I like what you're doing with your breakthrough strategies. You're out here trying to help people. I like your focus and how you're solving business problems. So I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful to have you and very honored to have you with someone with your level of experience. So for my listeners, we did meet over through LinkedIn and kind of developed a bit of a relationship along the way. And I just wanted to say that, for somebody that's growth, you're kind of like a growth specialist and strategist. And I just wanted to kind of let my listeners know a little bit about you, but I would really like to kind of kick that off, if you don't mind, with you kind of telling us a little bit about yourself and what led you to do the things that you do.
Man, that's great. First of all, that's a perfect way to start, right? Like, who are you and what do you do, right? So I'm here in a small town called Miami, Florida, right? I moved down here in 1990, 98. My father had lived here since 1980. And why I moved here, I always, call him in the winter and he's in his shorts and I'm freezing my buns off, and at the time I was in Nashville, New Hampshire, like, all right, I'm going to hang up now, but what all the good, there's always some things, there's some challenges. Like right now we're in July going into August. This gets into our hurricane season. And so there's always some stormy times, but once you've lived here like I have for 25 plus years, you roll with the punches. You know what's coming. You know what's going to happen. It's hit or miss. It's just you prepare. Hopefully, thank God, it does not hit you. But we're resilient people, and that's what I found myself to be. Is very resilient. I've been in account management and sales, business development since the early 90s. Actually, I went to DeVry Institute of Technology in Kansas City. I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, so I am a Cornhusker Go Big Red, right? Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm going to ride that one a little bit. Now we're also the home of the pound for pound best boxing champion in the world. If anybody saw that fight that just recently happened, he's from Omaha, Nebraska, my hometown. Very, very happy about those things. We got. Warren Buffett is from Omaha, Nebraska, so we got the world riches, man. We're in that world. We've got the best, and that's it. So I consider myself, hopefully, one of those. I can create a legacy along those lines. I'd be very happy. So I've been in information technology, and I got my start a lot in voice technology, working for a small company called AT&T and Lucent Technologies, and in their hardware division, PBX World, which is telephone systems, they spun it off and called Lucent Technologies. And I worked there for about 10 plus years when I moved down here to the South Florida market. And it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about business. It gave me an opportunity to understand the landscape here in South Florida, which is a myriad of different types of, whether they're small to mid-sized businesses, Fortune 500 companies, a lot of South American entities here, as well as international entities all over the place, in which I got a chance to talk to a lot of different people and expand my network. I grew my understanding of technology. I morphed from just the PBX voice over IP world into data center technologies, into data networking technologies, into cloud computing technologies, and now we're into AI technologies. And I've kind of rode that wave all the way through, which then started to get me into my business development for my own self, because I went through a layoff in what year was that? 2019. Got
Hmm.
to a point where a company contracted, and because of that contraction, I was in the healthcare division, and they got rid of that whole division. And because of that, I was caught up in that world. I had the year before, I was one of the top sales achievers in the company, but that has nothing to do with certain business realities. But my audience, the network that I had built out, reached out to me, said, Grant, what are you going to do next? We really like the way that you brand yourself. We really like the way that you've built out a stunning audience in South Florida, made up of information technology professionals and healthcare professionals. We like to tap into your network because we don't have that network as a business, and they could be in the Northwest, they could be in the Midwest, they could be in another country, and they wanted the opportunity to tap into that. And that was what sparked Star BDM. And when I first started, it was business development masters, because we were called BDMs at the time. And then I morphed it to become brand development masters, right? And I was leveraging my expertise in sales, account management, and business development from a brand perspective, because there's a lot of alignment between business strategy and brand strategy. The brand basically is the manifestation of your business strategy. You need to understand that. So that kind of got me going and rolling, kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's really amazing that transition part through there. So I have a lot of listeners that are in various stages of entrepreneurship, all the way from the entrepreneur all the way to the 8-figure level, right? So on that section that's kind of moving from that entrepreneur to an entrepreneur, which I call the $1 million marker area, what would you suggest? What's a hint that you can kind of give them, a gold nugget that you can give them on building that brand? Because you spend a lot of time talking about the transformation and building the brand and the ease of being able to talk to people and all. And a lot of people don't come by that naturally. It sounds like that you had a naturalness toward it. How would you advise somebody to kind of like enter that to where that they could get comfortable from their business standpoint?
Here's the deal. The truth of the matter is, how do you go from basically the ideation of your business, and then, because usually you're the business of one at that point, that it is an idea, right?
Yeah.
To then a multi-million-dollar business. How do you go from that one to a 10-figure business or something to that effect? And that is an interesting journey. That is going through a funnel that's very wide. A lot of people can ideate, right? It's a big wide funnel there. You can fit a lot in there. When you get down to a 10-figure, multi-million-dollar enterprise from that idea, that's a very, very small funnel. Very few people get to that level.
Yeah.
How do you get there? Well, you've got to do your research first. You've got to do some study. How did Steve Jobs take himself to that point? How did Elon Musk get to that point? How did a lot of these entrepreneurs that became multi-billion-dollar enterprises, like a Bezos and things like that? Well, you got to first start out with that understanding that it's a risky business, right? And they didn't just start out, wake up one day and like, yeah, that's it. They didn't walk out of the garage that HP was born, like, Hewlett Packard, HP, I see the whole thing.
Yeah.
No, you got to break a lot of eggs.
Yep.
You're going to go through a lot of business iterations. You're going to go through a lot of transformations. You're going to have to put in sweat equity into your brand and your business idea. And then you're going to have to let it kind of grow and morph and become what it's going to be, because ultimately, here's the first tip I would let someone know. And I think you already get this because I've seen a lot of things that you're doing. You have to understand the audience in which your business, your product or service is actually serving.
Absolutely.
What is it serving? Why does that audience or client or customer need what it is that you're doing? And then how big is that audience? Is that a world-class platform? Is it something that the entire planet needs? Because when you start talking about someone like a Steve Jobs or a Bezos or some of these other just worldwide entrepreneurs, they were building on a worldwide scale to get to that multi-million, billion-dollar, trillion-dollar level. So you got to really look at the market potential that you're working in and work backward from that. You know, what does that look like? How do I get to that level? I don't know if some of these big-time entrepreneurs just said, I got a billion-dollar idea that I'm going to implement, get funding for, get out of bed, hire a ton of people, and make this thing. It doesn't really work like that. It's a process. And then we were just talking about, you know, and I'm gonna use this as an analogy. You know, Bud Crawford is a great boxer. You know, he just won one of the biggest championships in boxing history here, you know, last week, and we haven't had a big fight since like Mayweather, Pacquiao. You know, and at one point, you know, the heavyweight title was like the thing in sports. Like that was the pinnacle, bigger than winning the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
But how do you get there? How do you go from working in a gym in a small town with no recognition, no credibility, no awareness? You've got some skills, you at least got the, you know, the guts to try it.
Yeah.
And then find your way through that. That is a journey. If you look at where Terrence Crawford is right now, he's 35 years old, right? He started when he was 7. That's a 28-year commitment.
Yeah.
So that's how I would answer your question to someone and say, how do you get there? Like, all right, do you have a 28-year business strategy and brand development methodology to get you to a multi-million-dollar corporation in 28 years?
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. I came from a blue-collar point in life, and I worked behind a forge, and I can tell you, it is a process of being forged through fire, and you know, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to burn some metal. You're gonna, but then eventually, you're going to do enough folding of that metal that you got a beautiful sword whenever it's done. So yeah, absolutely. The journey is critical, and I think learning from people like you is also a critical thing, because you know, you are giving your best wisdom to our listeners today, right? They're going to come in and turn it into their knowledge and then compile that into where, by applying to where it becomes their wisdom. And that's part of the journey too. If you can't learn from others, you're going to have a rough life.
Agreed.
So you talked a little bit about the ability that you know, this technology sales piece. What really kind of got you into that piece? Whenever you kind of what led you? How did you know that this was that point in your life that you needed to learn that?
You know, that's a great story. And I don't get asked that a lot. Like, hey, Grant, how did you get into information technology? They see that I've been in it for a while, but it actually started in high school. And I was a senior in high school, and, you know, I had taken some physics classes. You know, electronics at the time was like a buzzword. It was like you kind of heard about it, but you didn't know a lot. Computers were just getting kind of started. There was no PC at that time, personal computer. There was computing, but not a PC, which you would say personal computer. I'm dating myself, but that's how old I am. I graduated like 1981, and that was the deal. So I was trying to figure out what do I do next? I'm about to graduate. Am I going to go to, a big college? I'm going to go, to UNL or UNO or one of these colleges. Well, during that time, a group of people came to my school, and they were from Bell and Howell. And Bell and Howell they had invested in technology school, which became DeVry Institute of Technology.
Mm-hmm.
And they came to my school and they talked about a career in computers and computer programming and being able to build computer networks. And I was like, that sounds like something to do. And they said, well, all right, we have a campus in Kansas City, Missouri. I said, well, that sounds cool. And they said, and we don't have dorms, we have apartments. I went, oh, yeah, we got apartments. This sounds really cool. So me and my cousin, one of my friends, it turned out that 4 of us went down to DeVry Institute of Technology. And it to this day, here it is, I don't know how many, 40 years later, it still applies today, for what I learned, and just got me going with electronics, because I learned applied knowledge. I like applied knowledge. I don't just like getting information. I want to get some knowledge, and I want to apply the knowledge. Does that really work? Does it work in my case? And you find out with electronics, there's a lot of physical laws that go into it. And you also find out it's not an exact science on man's side of the ball, because we're patchworking a lot of different elements that sometimes don't always align at the time that you want it to. So that's why you get outages, you get jitter, you get latency, you get all this other stuff that we hear about now. But there's a reason, behind all that. And I love how transistors are formed, how you take atoms and break off electrons. All this stuff is very interesting to me. So that got me started in this technology field. And what I realized, that I had this thing that a lot of technologists don't have, this thing called a personality. So I had this personality that I could actually articulate technological ideas and be able to understand it at a level that someone that didn't understand technological ideas, but I can then create the bridge of understanding. And that's what got me into sales. So I got into technology sales and really into the 90s. And then that just morphed into what I was talking about earlier, getting down to South Florida and getting into the telephony world there, and then trying to morph it and continue to grow. And that's another thing about the field that I love, is that it's constantly changing. The game, once you think you've got it down pat, it changes. If you think you knew what was going on, I know cloud computing, we're great. All of a sudden, AI is down on top of that. You're like, oh my God, this is a super game changer. It's going to revolutionize our day-to-day experience in our world.
Yeah. I agree. It's from my company's perspective, we also mess with AI a lot. We're preparing for quantum computing. So just because of a lot of our clients are government, but I find that the IT is the most interesting, but you're absolutely right. It is constantly changing. It's like every 18 months. And nowadays, I'm beginning to wonder if it's not every 6 months that it's changing at this point. What do you think?
No, without question, because they're starting to get and work with universal principles. They started to work with, like you said, quantum physics. They understood a little bit about quantum physics, but how can you take something that's inherently in nature and then duplicate it to mirror it? And that's what's starting to get into quantum computing. And what happens in quantum computing, just very simply, is that right now in digital technology, you're dealing with ones and zeros at a real alarming rate of speed. In quantum computing, you could be the same point of instance of time could be a 1 and 0 simultaneously. That's like ridiculous. So what that does, the compute power changes exponentially. So if you think we're doing lightning speed things now, it's going to be ridiculous. You got to remember, when the internet first started, it was very clunky. In 1999, 2000, you're in a 56K modem. no one, 56K, think about that.
Yeah.
You're dealing with speeds now that are fiber, that you're dealing with light speeds now, just in the home. So man, you could not do what we're doing right now, 20 years ago, because it would have cost you a gazillion dollars. But you might have had the idea, like we talked about earlier, but the capability wasn't, you couldn't do it at a cost that was exponential on a worldwide level. That's just where we're at. So when you start thinking, going back to your understanding of business and how you're going to scale, you have to understand market timing. Is your idea at the right time in the right space to exponentially grow into a multi-million-dollar business? And that's always tricky, but you got to at least try it, because hey, going from 0 to $10 million, that journey along the way is pretty sweet.
Yeah. It is. I think, the Marine Corps always taught me, adapt and overcome, right? And, you've talked a lot about strategy, a lot about, sales and technology and the changes. And a lot of people get afraid whenever it comes down to like setting strategies like you're talking about today into place, because they're afraid it's just going to change. I think that they're even more surprised by, a lot of the advisory work that I give is that, hey, build 100-year strategy and just understand that it's going to make a lot of shifts along the way and build that flexibility into it. But you planted the flag far enough away that you can actually still attain the goal.
True. So, and one thing I do when I'm building up strategy, looking at strategies, understand constant. That the reason why our technology works, because there is a constant. There's a known factor. When you have a known factor that is a constant, what is the constant that you're hinging your business on? That is almost like an immovable object. That is the concrete, that is the foundational level of which you're going to launch your business. From there, it can grow. And then you're going to grow and you're going to branch, you can do other things. But at its core, the core of an oak tree is deep in its roots, deep in the ground, deep in those, and so it's not going to move. Even all the hurricanes on Earth, typically it's not going to move, that particular kind of tree. But you look for a constant, and that's, so when you get your idea, right, and you start to formulate a strategy, a development, right? So brand strategy goes before you get to, a lot of people, when they think of brand, they think of marketing, they think of, the visual aspects. Before you can even get there, you got to understand your brand identity, your brand voice, your brand personality. You got to start getting into the research and the understanding where this thing's going to live and sit, how you're going to position yourself, what is that going to look like? So at that point, when it becomes visible, it should have all those elements all together. A lot of people start with, they throw up a website, they throw up all this stuff, and it's in the middle of nothing because there's no foundation.
Right. Yeah, even before they've discovered who their customer is going to be, right?
And that's the number one thing you start with in the first place. What is your business idea or service or product serving? And look at that client. That's a constant, usually. But, the human behavior changes all the time, but the humanity is still there. So, you look at these large corporations, how they grew. They built their foundation, the fact that human beings have to eat. So you have a lot of food companies that are multi-million-dollar franchises, right? Yeah. McDonald's and your grocery stores and everything in the grocery store. You start thinking about household goods. Those are constants because you need to do that. You start looking at transportation. Well, I've got to have a car, or I've got to have a bus. I've got to have a train. I've got to have a plane and all those things. So you start building your idea on the foundational aspects of who you're serving and what they're going to need, and possibly even need, as you're pointed out, in the future. What is that going to look like? When you can't always tell, 100 years is a while out. I don't think if right now, if you look at the world in 1923, the roaring 20s.
Yeah.
Right? They're just getting into utilizing cars as major
Oh, yeah.
transportation. The man flight is just getting off the ground. You got electricity being kind of in every home. I mean, it's just starting to really catch fire, right?
Yeah.
You had prohibition. You could not drink, legally. And you just came off a big war. So look at the change in 100 years from 1923 to 2023. You still got mankind, still needs to eat, but how is he living?
Yeah.
Totally different.
Yeah. So what's different for your clients whenever they're working, with you? So what's that? What can they expect from that?
What they're going to find out from me is that they're going to get a process. I call it the Brave Brand Blueprint. It's my strategy.
Ooh, wow.
Right? Brave. Because you got to be brave. You got to be courageous
Preach it.
to take on this endeavor. You've got to be brave. And I tell people that you got to be brave, but you don't want to go out there and face your challenges, without being prepared. At least giving you an opportunity to succeed, right? Because as you know, as a military man, if you go out into the field of battle without some kind of plan,
the
results aren't good.
Not too good.
No, and that's what happens. People, they want to overtake the castle. They want to overtake the market, which is the castle, and they want to go straight on. Well, these guys are already sitting there with their bayonets and whatnot on top of the castle. They already see you coming. They're going to pull up the drawbridge. You're going to fall into the moat, and you're going to get these arrows, flying all around you, and you're going to start running back to where you came from because you attacked it head on. They're expecting you to come through that door. I teach people through the Brave Brand Blueprint to be where you're not expected to be disruptive. How about if they're poised and they're shooting their arrows at all those competition, and you tap them on the shoulder from behind, like, do you need any more arrows?
That's so good. That's so good.
So they're not you need to be where they're not expecting you to be. You're having conversations with the king, the queen, and everyone else in leadership, when they're not expecting you to have that capability. But you've got to be smart. You have to understand the needs. If you understand, here's one of my biggest tips. I'll give you another big tip for your audience. You need to understand your target audience, your client, your customers' problems, challenges, needs better than your own products and services.
Oh, yes, so true.
This is the number one problem I've seen it time and time again. Come working in the technology world, working in the technology field, seeing the marketing that comes out of these multi-million-dollar businesses. It's all me. It's all me. Here's my speeds, here are my feeds. I'm better than everybody else. That's not going to differentiate anything. And you're only talking about yourself. You haven't identified my journey. You haven't identified my problem. You haven't talked about my sweat equity. You haven't talked about how this is really grinding me down and how you're going to be the hero in my story.
Yeah. Well, and oftentimes customers want to be the hero in the story. They don't want you to be. You're the advisor.
Yeah.
They want to be right. So
got to enable them.
Yeah,
you got to give them the right tool. You're an enabler. I love you.
And then in your story, you are the hero because you just help them. But in their story, they are the hero.
They are the hero. And
they're killing the dragon at the end of the day.
That's it. And this is the problem, right? You as a customer, you got the dragons in front of you. You go reach, for your weapon, and you pull up and it's a banana. You're like, what the heck? This is not good. This is not a good product. This is not a good service. This is terrible. I'm about to get eaten.
Yeah. So, Grant, I really enjoyed this podcast today, and I thank you for all your time. I have one last question that I would like to ask before we start the close down of the podcast. Are there any specific books or articles that you can suggest to the listeners that they should be reading and learning from
Well,
today?
things that help me, and you're going to find this if you listen to any of my podcasts, and I've got a lot of articles on medium.com. If you Google my name, put in Grant McGaugh at medium.com, there's an outlet. You see a lot of things that I've written, a lot of things around AI technology. I've written a lot of things around business development and what that truly will look like. And I've worked with a lot of marketing or brand strategists that got me really started. And because they work with the fundamentals, it's so important to understand the fundamentals. So person that I followed a lot was Mike Kim. Mike Kim, he has an 8-step framework that when you're starting out with an idea, if you follow the things that he's talking about, it'll get you to that next level. You start to do the litmus test of where you're at, where you're really at, and you can start applying some things, right? I like another gentleman by the name of Stephen Horohoff, right? He was he started out just doing a lot around web design and logo design. Then he got into brand strategy, right? And understanding the tenets and why that's important, how it's intertwined. We're not talking about the marketing of things. People get involved so far deep. That is so far down the steps where you need to be when you come to visual assets from a brand perspective. We're talking about, you have to have a business strategy, but that the visual aspects of your visual strategy is your brand. And that's why the business strategy is the personification of the brand. That's all of that is together intertwined. So if you go to my website, you can get a lot of great information. You've got over 100 to 125 different professionals who've told their stories of how they got successful, whether it's from a business perspective or also a career development perspective. So I encourage people to do that as well.
Absolutely. And I'll put that link together and put it down in the show notes for listeners, along with all of your other contact information. I think that you said something that I have to bring back up that's critical, because you talked about marketing, right? But I think what differentiates you from so many other of these, I will call them marketing gurus out there, is that you've actually got the experience on the sales side. That's what makes you different, because a lot of people can read a book, man. I used to be a professor. I taught in a lot of major universities, and you can open up a book and lecture on it, right? But you can't take that approach with a sales. Sales is different. It's an applied, and it's applied, not just science, it's an applied art. And so, I can tell whenever I'm around marketers that really have that experience. And listeners, if you are hunting for somebody to kind of help you, that's the type of people you need to contact Grant, because that's the type of people that you need in your corner, because they can take you beyond the sales piece, the sales copy, into the boardroom, closing the deal.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up. That is what I bring to the table. 30 plus years of sales experience. There's always this thing between sales and marketing. They don't always go together. We're in a world now where before you could not really change your marketing materials as a salesperson. It was pretty much stuck in, because you didn't have the capabilities of being creative. Right. Now you can. You can be creative. That's why I do personal branding and social selling. I can be creative with visual information that I can convey communication, I can convey thought leadership, I can convey subject matter expertise to my client, because I now have the capabilities that I didn't have 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in our closing remarks here, we're going to put out the links. Is there any other links that you wish to kind of mention out before that I'll add to the show notes before we go to our last question?
Main one is just go to the website, 5-star, that's the number 5, Star, STAR BDM. That's for branddevelopmentmasters.com. It's got a lot of everything you're looking for is pretty much there. You can also go to my podcast at Follow the Brand. That's Follow the Brand Podcast TV. So I have a TV show on Wednesday nights. My podcast actually airs every Tuesday night. And I have all types of guests, whether they're from matter of fact, brand masters. A lot of the great brand masters in the world are on my podcast. We're now about 14 episodes in. I encourage you to listen to that. You'll learn a lot about career development, business development, technology, innovation, and financial empowerment and executive presence.
Oh, so needed today. So needed. So I want to give you the chance. This is the final floor. So I want to give you the chance to give some closing remarks and take us out on the show. So thank you, Grant. Really appreciate you being here. So the floor is yours, my friend.
No, thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate your audience. If people are tuning in to you, they're tuning into you for a purpose. They're trying to do, a lot of times is I'm testing my idea. Is this the right way to go? Am I on the right path? Can I bounce these ideas off of somebody who's been down the road? And this is what's so important. Depending on where you're at, you need to understand that somebody has already been through what you're going through. And if you can then, what I call shorten your speed to market, don't make the same mistakes. Don't spend a ton of money on different tools, different courses, all these different things without first understanding that you need a strategy. You need to get that from a mentor, someone who's done this before that can first validate your idea, validate your business plan or what you're even talking about doing, and have a greater understanding like, all right, if this is what you're going to do, I'm not telling you to not do it or to do it. These are the things that you're going to have to do from an investment of time, an investment of capital, right? And understand what you're going to need to do from a moxie standpoint. How much grit you're going to have to put into the game, right? What is it going to take to get you to where you want to go? And when I say that, think of this. Every professional athlete that you've known has gotten coaching. They could not become who they were at the level that they were able to accomplish their goals without good coaching. You need to get good coaching. And that doesn't mean you go with any coach. You got to find the right coach that is for you, that understands what you're trying to accomplish. I love how you pointed out sales. Like, yes, that is a key differentiator for me when it comes from a marketing perspective or a business development perspective. I've closed multi-million-dollar deals multiple times in my journey. So if your journey, going back to your first thing you asked me, going from 0 to 10 million is your goal. Yeah, I could probably get you there, but you've got to understand the process and what it takes to do it.
So true. Thank you for giving us those gold nuggets. I always say that whenever you bring wise men into a room to speak, you will get some gold nuggets. So listeners, reach out there and grab you some. So reach out and grab and talk to Grant for me. So Grant, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to Morning Joe with Tom. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. See you next time for more real-life stories and inspiration on Morning Joe with Tom.